Hey, coffee experts. Those of you running independent coffee shops, you're always looking for ways that you can drop your costs. And we here at the Coffee Experts Club really understand that. And so we've started something called Indie Coffee Coalition. And what it's designed to do is to drop your costs on two of the things that you're probably experiencing the highest sales volume in your store. And that is energy drink and frat mix. Those two line items, we've created our own products and are offering you those products at a reduced cost so that you can cut out the Red Bull of America. You can cut out the main lines of energy drinks that you're doing and serve your own energy drink at a reduced cost on a line item that you're probably already making a lot of sales on anyway. The best way that you can grow sales is by dropping your costs and maintaining a current volume. So check us out at indiecoffee.co and we'll love to tell you more there.
Welcome to the Coffee Experts Club, where we discuss all of the insights, expertise, and drama that goes into making your passion your profession. Our hosts, Aaron, Ben, and Drew, are three coffee experts who have taken their coffee experience and turned it into true expertise. They have consulted with major coffee brands throughout the United States and beyond, providing operations expertise and growth strategy for drive-through openings, multiple locations, and everything in between. So brew yourself a cup and hang out a bit with the Coffee Experts Club.
Yes, Coffee Experts Club, Drew and Ben.
Good to see you guys.
I try to catch on to people's intro to online meetings, and sometimes I jump on the bandwagon. So at the same time,
Ben used to say Heidi Ho a lot. Heidi Ho.
Heidi ho. You know what's bad is I still say YOLO from what was that, 2003 when kids were saying that?
YOLO.
And you really do peak in your 20s and then just never change.
Man, I'll tell you what, man, you in your 20s, you were wearing skinny pants. You were looking emo to maximum velocity. So I think you've risen to a better occasion.
you're in your 20s in 2003, Ben. I might have gauged you wrong.
I don't even know what age I was. I don't even know how old I am right now. That was a guess.
Oh man, it's the dad years. Anyway, hey, welcome to Coffee Experts Club today, guys. Great to have you with us. If you're thinking about starting your next coffee shop, this is the place to be. If you know somebody who wants to start a coffee shop, this is the place to be. We're diving into all kinds of topics. Last week we talked about new locations, and this week we're going to talk about people. You know, there's certain things that go into that. There's certain things that go into what makes a coffee location great. And today we're going to talk largely about people and how you pull that apart. And so let's kick that off, guys. What are your thoughts on the topic of people? Drew, I know we've been struggling with that on our end of things quite a bit lately, and just I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts on people and that part they make up in coffee.
Well, people, I think, in any industry is an ever-changing factor. You know, if it's the changing of the trends or changing of social media topics or changing of the guard as people get older, you know, and we're in coffee, we do kind of have a target that we aim for, at least, you know, the wave that we are in coffee. We want a certain age group does tend to work better and appeal better to our general customer base. And they're always changing. You know, as I'm getting way older, you know, and it's ever more apparent as we hire. I was working in Reno and I met this girl. I was like, oh, I was, you know, making coffee when you were barely getting into grade school. You know what I mean? So it's harder and harder to understand without, you know, doing the research and asking the questions and trying to stay ahead of what it means to work with people, because we're a customer facing business and our happy baristas mean happy customers.
I think I've said 1,000 times that your people are your most valuable and your most difficult asset to manage. Like they make and they break your business. So when you have great people, it's amazing. And when you have bad people, it's like the headache that you can't seem to get rid of. Everything else is easy, right? It's spreadsheets and numbers and ordering percentages and revenue costs, but people don't fit on spreadsheets. Like they're unique. And so they can be amazing. I think one of the biggest jobs of any coffee shop operator is how do you find the best people and the right people and people that fit what you want to do with your company, fit your culture, fit your ethos, and how do you keep them around as long as you can, and how do you promote them and give them an ascension path? How do you, like Drew said, how do you keep them happy? Because a happy employee is going to make, you know, your customers even happier.
Yeah. I mean, like to probably qualify it for our guests who are listening, Ben, like you ran a company of 150 employees, you know, like 15 locations in a roastery. Drew, you regionally managed over 7 different locations. Yeah. I mean, and you ran the largest location and then regionally managed the rest, which was a crazy feat. So when it comes to people, you guys both have dealt a lot with people. I know, Drew, you've done a ton of recruiting, ton of that front end hiring. and you'd funnel them up to Ben. And Ben, you did a bunch of training. Like there's a bunch of
Mhm.
training that came in on the back of that. And then like I think probably talking through retention, right? Because once you find the right person in the recruiting process, right? You train the right person, you get them understanding all your system. It's like, how do you retain the right people for long enough? And equally, EOS would say hire slow and fire fast. You know what I mean? Like,
Mhm.
let's make sure we've got the right person on the bus. And then once somebody's not showing up at their marks consistently, like there's that part in all of us that wants to give people grace, wants to give them opportunities. Maybe it's like the heart sickness of knowing, man, if I fire this person, I'm going to have to take over a bunch of the stuff that I just got off my plate.
Mhm.
What do you guys think about that when it comes to the hiring process, the training process, the determining how long we keep this person process, the retention process? Talk to me about that a little bit.
Ideally, and the way we had it at Roasters for the longest time is we were such a well-known company, and we had a cool factor that
Yeah.
hiring, the actual recruiting and hiring was not difficult for us. We
Right.
had people constantly coming to us saying, "Can I work for you?" So if that's not happening to you, work on your ethos of your company, work on your culture of your company. Like, why is it that you're not attracting workers? Obviously, I mean, we're talking the difference between 2011 and 2024. There's a big difference in the workforce there, but you should still have people wanting to come and work for you. And there's a new crop of 18-year-olds every year who need a job. So hiring hopefully isn't a huge issue in finding talent. The training and retention, that's where a lot of the work goes into it. Training, I mean, we got it down to a science of, as training as quickly as possible, as efficiently as possible, while still giving them ample time to learn. I mean, I don't even know how many people I've trained over the years, 200 kids, 200 plus
Yeah.
kids going through our training. But that handoff of, we really like the handoff of what we would do is we'd bring the kids in. They do like an onboarding training week with me where it was like, let's go over foundational stuff. How do you pull a shot? How do you steam milk? How do you even like pour sauce in a cup or something? Okay. What are your employee benefits? What does your schedule look like? This sort of foundational things that you would get at any job. And then from there, it was like a handoff to a Drew who is, okay, Ben's giving you like your foundational layer of learning. You've hopefully retained some of that. Now Drew's going to take you into a shop and build on that and build on, okay, what does it look like to do this with a customer, staring you down for a minute and a half and not getting nervous and dropping the drink. So training, I'm always be a huge advocate of educating people in blocks and steps so that they can retain as they go. Because if you just throw a kid into a shop on the window and you say, all right, make a drink, they're gonna go, "Oh my god, no, I'm out of here." But if you give
Yeah.
them like foundational steps to slowly walk up their path of learning, they retain a lot more, and it helps build confidence a lot more when they do finally get on that window and have to talk to the customer and think about the drink and do all the multitasking that we do in the shop.
Yeah, and I mean, there's no secret formula for finding the perfect employee, and I think as we all want the perfect employee, if I had the ideal company, everyone would be gung ho for, serving the customers perfectly, making all the drinks perfectly, wanting to move up in the company. That might not always be a great thing because then you have a cap of like, if I can't grow that fast, they're going to all
Yeah.
really leave. Somebody's going to find something better. So back to the point of, hire slow, fire fast. It's at what point do I have a mix of, I have these employees that are amazing, and then I have these employees that are just kind of here holding space. And
Mhm.
hold on to those employees, and what kind of a mix does that really look like? And what are those qualities that we're trying to find? So to Ben's point, the process that we put the kids through from the foundational to the actual operational and practice, it showed us a lot of the qualities that we were looking for, whether or not it was on purpose. I mean, it was developed over 12 years or something like that
Mhm.
into a science. How do they work with, other people on their team? How are they going to work with customers? Are they really, in it for the business? What is the purpose that they need the job for? Those were all questions that kind of got answered over the 2 week training, 3 week training for people who needed a little extra assistance like myself. I think it took me about 3 weeks to get through the training by the grace of Road 68. But taking a good look at what kind of training are we going to do? And something that we struggle here actually with is our training process is long, and that's not something that people are used to here on the island because it's all a good majority of it. I mean, it's all hospitality. A good majority of it is, waiting tables or being a host or something that you can cut and paste to another place. And so we've kind of had to learn how to speak that language of how can we get people in here effectively and quickly. and get them working so that it's not a 2-week training process that they're waiting around before they can actually do something, and keeping those people entertained in the same time.
I was thinking, Ben, even as you're talking, because I remember the early years that you're talking about, and what developing out training with Jordan, you know what I mean? And then passing it off to Mason and all, all the different people that obviously we teach here a lot about EOS, Entrepreneur's Operating System, from the book Traction by Gino Wickman. And they've got a big section on delegate and elevate. Like the way that Ben ascended to overseeing 150 employees is by creating a replicable system that he could hand down and train somebody underneath him to do. And I think that you did that well, and you were able to raise up people underneath you. And Drew, I know that we're working on the same at De Los Mayas down in Belize. Drew, I really love the building blocks, like what Ben was talking about. I thought that was brilliant. And Drew, you did a great job we created our own portal that we put the kids through. They
Yeah.
give them those building blocks that then enable you to, like move on from it. Something we do with Copy Experts Academy. I think we spent like 4 weeks talking through this topic of people and gave you different tools, so if you're ever looking for that, I think that we gave great content there. But I will say that thing that you created, Drew, and I know you didn't love it because it was like take 2, take 7, take 23, like over and over, having to film that whole thing. But it's awesome because we put people through this thing, and they consume all the portals, and then we give them a test at the end. And if they didn't score high enough, we're like, okay, start again. Like go back through them all again, take the test again until you can get a score to here. Then we're not going to ascend you to the next level. And then that's when we pass them off to, like you were saying, Ben, then we hand them off to a Drew's type
Yeah.
in person, hands on. And it also gives them an opportunity to watch things at home, take tests at home, consume it there. That way we're not just having to bring bodies in and train them over and over again. I feel like that's been a really cool way to automate something and to personalize it and make it really our own.
Well, what was interesting about that process, other than I remember we brought our professional on our team to help film it in
Yeah.
one of our clients' coffee shops. Coffee Republic was good to us.
Yeah.
Use them as a setting for this, and I remember it was tiring. I'd be asleep on the floor, and Josh would have to wake me up he's like, I'm done looking at these. Oh, let's do the next one. But they did it so much differently than other clients that we've done, and so it's what we created was nice because it's not just one way to make the drinks. One way
Yeah.
to use the machines. Their equipment was different than what we use here. And so we're able to touch, on the points of, hey, if you're using this type of machine, or if you're using pumps, or if you're using scoops, and speak to that language. And that not only does that teach all of, the different ways, but it starts the conversation between our baristas. They've asked me, what does it actually mean? What's the difference between pumps and scoops, and how is that applied between drinks? Here they learn, I call it Starbucks speak, because it's just different than how we do it. But they'll have Americans come down, or people come from Mexico or Guatemala, and they'll order like a tall or a venti, and my baristas are like, we would not have known what that was, except we went through this training. And it didn't take me, training takes a long time because you talk to the barista, you have them repeat the information to you, and then practice the information. But these videos kind of just cut it down to me speaking for an hour.
It's actually really smart too to think about, like when we were back in the day at Roasters, we had the luxury of having a training facility before they were in the shop.
Right.
Which is not a luxury. Most companies don't have that, especially if you're just starting out. So
Yeah.
how can you take some of that training off site and doing something like a portal where they're getting that foundational information? So you're not, taking 3 hours in the middle of a day in your shop trying to show them what your grinder even does. Like as much of that you can take off site, I think is a great idea. Even if it's like, hey, I'm going to pay you, for 3 hours of training while you're at home, and I'll expect that you pass the test afterwards. Like anything that you do, you can take off site to get them out of the chaos. Cause let's be honest, trying to learn on bar in the middle of a rush is difficult. It's very difficult, especially for somebody who's never been in the industry before. So if you can take that offsite, give them some foundational principles outside of the chaos, and then slowly introduce the chaos, they have a much higher probability of retaining that information. And you can therefore, shorten down and make your training total lengths more efficient.
Hey, experts, we've got something really awesome that we do here at Coffee Experts Club, and that's called the My First Drive-Through Coffee Masterclass. So if you're opening your next coffee shop, I think a lot of times you may think to yourself, I know what goes into opening a coffee shop. I've been doing this for years, but maybe you've been doing it for somebody else. And maybe this is your first option of starting a coffee shop on your own. Or maybe you don't know anything about coffee and you're just like, I'm looking for a good investment opportunity. Starting a coffee shop seems like a good place to put it, and you're going to enter into it. But what you don't know is all the things that you don't know, right? And so what we've done with this masterclass is taken behind the scenes how you find your first location, what you need to be thinking about in finding a location. We give you a gift in the masterclass where it's a step-by-step process of how you're opening your coffee shop, the different checkpoints you need from coming up with your plans and talking with the city and then negotiating a lease. And then how do you build a team and what are the different pieces you need to be thinking about? It's a great masterclass, door to door, start to finish, completely free on opening up your next coffee drive-through. So check it out. It's at myfirstdrivethrough.coffee and it's a great masterclass. You won't regret it. We'll see you on the inside there. Let's talk about this real quick. So I think it's probably a topic that comes up quite a bit. And I know we have a pretty strong stance on it. And, we go into it pretty deep on the academy as well, is age group, like an experience level. Like, do we want to catch them young? Do we want them to have served coffee someplace else? What do you guys think of those two things?
I think me 9 years ago would have said I would rather a brand new barista than an experienced barista, because an experienced barista would traditionally have been a Starbucks barista, and there's
Yeah.
a lot of stuff you have to train out. But I feel like fast drive-through coffee is becoming so much more ubiquitous that I would say an experienced barista is probably a good pick at these days. I don't know, Drew. You tell me. You're in the throes of it right now.
Mm. Well, I mean, it's been a unique experience down here because we have basically no baristas. I mean, there are people who have pulled shots, but it's not exactly how we do it. There are people who know what a grinder does, but not exactly how it works. So pretty much everybody we've gotten is a clean slate. And I mean, honestly have a better understanding rate. I think, they can at least regurgitate it to me intelligently here than I did out of, let's say I picked 15 kids here and 15 kids up there. More people down here are passing the test faster. So just based off that information, a new barista seems to be what we'd be looking for. But back to the point of a Starbucks barista, they don't already have a recipe book in their head.
Mhm.
They're not trying to rename the drinks in their head or relearn the levels of things that they are already making, but under a different name and a different way. So there's tons of factors that go into it. But personally, me, I've always preferred new baristas. I don't have to work out bad habits. We have strong personalities that they think that they know the way. They came from a place where they took pride in their work and maybe they left for whatever reason. They bring that to the workplace. And when you're not around, they're teaching people their way. And so we've dealt with things like that. As far as age group goes, obviously the young kids are great. The 18-year-olds have great energy, probably more so than a 35-year-old. I'm getting to that. I'm getting up there. So my energy is not quite, the bouncy, shouty type that it used to be. So I'm in there somewhere. 18 to 35-year-olds can make a great cup of coffee.
They're just not as friendly either.
Yeah. And it's harder to get up early. You know what I mean?
Oh
It's
man,
true.
grumpy old people at 35. What's happened to us,
Yeah,
man? How's that working out?
age range trumps like hunger too. Like if you've got somebody coming in who's like, I just really want to work at your company because I love everything that you guys do and I love coffee and I want to learn coffee, great.
Yeah.
If you've got the energy and the hunger for it, I think that's going to make a good employee.
Yeah, let's
Yeah.
talk about that for a minute. That's a good thing to talk about. So do you guys, through the years, we've had different conversations about how we do interviews. Like, do we interview people one-to-one? Do we interview team interviews? I've seen you both kind of move more the direction of a team interview because of being able to identify somebody's energy when they're in a room. Can we talk about that a little bit? How we hold interviews, and then what you're looking for in the person that is going to be the one you hire, right? Because you're probably interviewing, like Drew, I know we've done some where it's like you have 8 or 10 people there and we're only hiring one position. Or 2 positions, So how do you identify who the 1 or 2 are possibly going to be? Because obviously you're going to identify them and then you're going to bring them through a training. And then if they last that, then you're going to send them to the next level. And the hope is that we don't have to keep putting out dollars, right? Because I think if they can hear this part, it's super important, is there's an ROI on every person that you bring through. There's a return on investment. Like that costs you time, that costs you energy, that costs you dollars, that costs you tax dollars, right? All this thing through. So for you to determine they're not the right fit 4 to 6 weeks downstream, that's a sucky investment. And that means they're gone. That you just lit money on fire and sent it down the drain. So talk to me about what you guys look for when you're recruiting.
Well, again, like I said, there's no real secret sauce, right? I've hired people that I'm like, this guy's going to just be awesome. And he gets in here and is not awesome. It's the opposite. So, I mean, I used to prefer a more, one-on-one situation or 1 to 2, if I have an assistant manager or a manager with me or, whoever that I'm trying to show the ropes. I liked that, but because it gave the barista a nice, comfortable place to express themselves. Now, on the flip side of that, a coffee shop is not that. It's not a 1-to-1 situation
Right.
ever, and busy coffee shops, you can have multiple customers. And really what we do is entertain, and so if you're kind of a quiet person, you might shine on a one-to-one conversation and make it seem like you're just the most social butterfly ever. But that might not be the case when you get in a shop with 5 baristas and, 15 customers. And it does vary. And I have leaned more towards group interviews because I can see how they're going to interact. I can see who's going to step up. I can see how they're going in a team scenario, I can see who's going to be talkative, who can start a conversation, who can hold a conversation. And it's almost the same types of questions. It's just you're a little bit more forward. You have to, it depends on how long you're going to have your interview. If you got 10 people, you can't just have a half an hour interview with the same amount of information you get out of a one-on-one interview for a half an hour. So just kind of have to know what you're looking for and you go into the interview. Do you want somebody social? Do you want somebody bubbly? What type of position are you hiring for? Things like that.
Yeah, I would say just even from, we moved to the group interviews just out of an efficiency point. Like if we're opening a new shop and we need 15 people, like you can't take 15 hours to do interviews. Right. Even if they're 30-minute interviews, that's almost 7 hours of interviews. Like how can we batch this out a little bit faster? And then from there, it's great to Drew's point is you can in your mind rank where these people are going to be in your shop. Oh yeah, that's definitely an opener. That's a night guy. He's funny. He's great. He's a little goofy. He'll be a great night guy. She's a super forward, super go get 'em, like super bubbly attitude. That's a great morning person. So you can kind of engage these people as you're interviewing them. And if you do pick 3 or 4, then you've got, morning, afternoon, and night already picked out in your head.
So then to ask you guys this too, then, and it's a 2 for question. So do we want all the people that we hire to ascend? Like, right? Because we're talking about wanting people that want more, but like to Drew's point, how many locations are you opening? How many management opportunities are there going to be? Like, do you want people, like every person you hire to ascend, or is it okay to be like, no, I understand that person. Who's the dude that I always forget his name, but like was with Roasters for like 35 years? Tim.
Yeah.
Yes. So like Tim, he didn't want to manage. He just liked making coffee. He just loved the craft. He just liked coming in and working his shift. And I feel like there is that spot where you're like, you need people like that because how many management slots are you going to be able to open up? So what are your guys' thoughts on that? Like, number one, are you always looking for people to ascend? And then the other thing I want to ask you guys about is how do you feel about hiring managers that weren't groomed underneath you? Like, do you ever hire managers that were managers someplace else and bring them into a management slot? So go, let me hear what you guys think of those two.
I would say it's great to want to hire people who are hungry about ascension, but that's not how the business works. You have to have night guys. Yeah. The night guys naturally are just the guys who are like, look, I want to be able to go snowboarding on the weekends and stay up late. And I just need money so I can do that. Like those are great. Like to Drew's point earlier, those are great people to have because everybody's a super go get 'em. I want to ascend. Then nobody's a barista. Everybody's a manager. You only have so many management spots. And I think when we were talking to, I can't remember who we were talking to on one of the other podcasts. They're in a college town and they have all the college kids who come and go.
Well, Paul from Cuff Culture.
Yes. And they have kids come in who are super motivated and super wanted. They're like, I want to do something with my life. Those are the ones that disappear the fastest because they're like, thanks for the money. I've got goals. I got to go meet them. See you later.
Right.
So it's like, it's a double-edged sword. You need if you have a team of, I would say, 10 people, you want 2 really motivated folks because that's your manager and your assistant manager. And you want a varying level of go get 'emness out of the rest of them because you want people who want to move up and get better, but you also want people who are like, I'm okay here for a year. Maybe in another year, next year, I'll think about managing, but right now I just want to go snowboarding on the weekend.
Yeah. I always want to be looking for someone who wants to ascend in some way, shape or form. If it's somebody who's snowboarding and they're avid about that and they want to, if they want to master a trick, that's a form of ascension. It doesn't have to be applied necessarily to the shop, but it's someone who has aspirations to learn, and for me, that's somebody I can teach something to. Though not everyone needs to want to ascend within the store, I'd love to provide an environment that's slightly challenging in some way, shape or form so that they can, apply themselves to that challenge. And it doesn't have to be necessarily store oriented, but I'd love them to go out the other side of the shop thinking that they've learned something and gained some sort of skill. So it is a nice balance. Not everyone needs to want to move up and it's almost going to hinder you. Like Ben said, they're going to bounce. But it's nice to have people who are teachable and coachable and interested in something.
I think it also depends on, and to your question about, do you hire out or do you only promote internally for management? It really depends on, your demographic and where you're at and just your employment pool.
Mm.
Are you in a retirement, area in Florida and the youngest person within, 2 miles is, in their 30s, or are you in a college town? Like the demographic of your employment pool is going to really determine how you promote from within or you have to hire outside. For us, we're lucky we're in a Tri-Cities. It was a really large suburban metropolitan area. And so there's a lot of kids. We had a lot of opportunity to say, hey, no, we can decide to only promote from within because we've got a lot of talent coming to us for jobs, and we can give them a pathway to ascension. We can train them. But if you don't have that, then you might just have your hands tied behind your back and have to say, let's put a job listing on Indeed or something. I would say preferably hiring from within because, of course, you've got company culture ingrained in them. They know the ascension path, they know the customers, and giving them the ability to go from the shop where they grew up to then going and managing a different shop gives them a greater air of responsibility and ownership in your company. It's just, I think it's better overall.
Yeah, I agree. I think ideally, in an ideal scenario, we're going to always promote from within. And like you said, we're blessed to have that. If I couldn't, I wouldn't stop from I wouldn't, hinder myself by wanting to promote from within. I could look externally and, management skills are one of those things that you go pretty much anywhere. And it's the same basic skills. You need to be
Mhm.
organized. You need to know how to, look at numbers. You need to know how to look at schedules. You need to know how to look at spreadsheets, solve customer problems, things like that. Those are things you can take from place to place. And the unique part about your business is something you can teach to them once they're in the business, once they meet the customers, once they meet the baristas. You can hint at it before, but nobody really knows until they get, behind the bar and get to working with the people. So yeah, ideally, definitely I would promote from within, but if I have to, I wouldn't stop from hiring externally.
Okay, last question as we get ready to wind up for today, guys. And man, listeners, I hope you've been enjoying this because these are two guys that have been doing this a long time, and I love hearing you guys talk about this stuff. How long do you wait before you cut somebody? Like what's the like what's the deciding factor? Do you use write-ups? How many write-ups do they get before they're kicked out? Like, are there certain things that it's like, no, you didn't even get a write-up, you're just out? Like what are your thoughts on those things?
I was a very big proponent of if it's in black and white, it's not my fault, it's your fault that you're fired. And it really made because we didn't for the longest time. It was like you didn't lock the doors when you left. You left the cat door open. And we'll let it slide this time. Before you know it, you've let it slide like 15 times, and they're probably stealing from you now. I was a very large proponent of like the very first day onboarding orientation is we sit down and we read through your employee handbook together line by line. Here's everything that we expect from you as a company. And if you don't do these things, here's what happens. One written violation goes on your record, comes off in, I think it was like 90 days or something like that. 2 violations and a warning, maybe a suspension of hours, 3 violations, and we decide whether or not we want to terminate you. And it sounds harsh, but it makes it really easy when you're dealing with 150 kids who all have different lives and different things are going on. Your manager, like, I like this kid, but do I fire him? Well, do they have violations on their record with us? Yes. Well, then there you go. Easy answer.
I mean, I remember Cody's stories about getting a write up for not stamping cups back when he was his manager. He will never let that thing go.
He will.
Yeah, I mean, it's easiest when it's black and white. And if you have the employees, don't hold on to the bad employees. There's a good employee waiting right around the corner to give the opportunity to do those things. There are some things I think that are immediate termination. Obviously, well, to me, obviously, theft. You're not going to keep somebody who stole from you. It's how can you trust them after that? Unless you have somebody watching over their shoulder. And if they were stealing, there's probably other people who knew about it and didn't say anything about it. And it's just one bad apple spoils the bunch. No call, no shows are a big deal for us. I think once you leave your baristas high and dry, they're not going to be super happy with you either way. That's one that we are going to, cut pretty quickly. Those are big violations. I think we let go quick. But I think documentation is everything. It's something that we've been trying to master down here, and we're kind of in the startup phase still, so we're transitioning from, we really need all these employees. What exceptions do we have to make?
Mm-hmm.
I think true. And I think probably something to take into consideration as we wind up the show today is the culture that you're in, right? So for us in Belize, we're finding there are understandings that we have here in America that just don't always translate down to a different country, and then you have to take into accommodation or consideration rather. Okay, so what didn't translate? What things are we trying to now establish as a cultural norm within Coffee de las Mayas. You know what I mean? That, no, this is the de las Mayas way. You know what I mean? So if you want to work here, I understand what you've learned out there. This is how it has to go here for the ship to run tight. Otherwise things get loosey goosey. Things aren't happening here. And so anyway, take culture into consideration. Gentlemen, excellent show today. Thank you for talking about people. Thank you to all of our listeners who have tuned in today for the podcast. Great having you guys as well. And we'll see you next week on Coffee Experts Club. Thank you, gents.
Thanks so much for joining us today. For those of you who are looking to become a coffee expert yourself, we offer an incredible, thorough training online for opening your first coffee drive-thru at www.myfirstdrivethru.coffee.